The turbine engine whined to a high-pitched sound and the rotor blades started to vibrate the whole helicopter. We raised up about 10 feet, and then the nose of the helicopter went down to about a 30-degree angle, and we picked up speed. We headed out over the perimeter wire at low level and at about 110 miles per hour. We stayed at low level and at high speed. We did not fly in a straight line and flew in a sort of zigzag course. I noticed that the pilots had armored seats, and that the gunner and crew chief wore steel breastplates and also sat on ones. We had none. There were no pilot or cabin doors at all on the helicopter. It was completely open-sided with an M60 machine gun on both sides of the cabin that both the gunner and crew chief operated. Over the noise of the helicopter, the crew chief yelled out at the top of his lungs that we had to fly low and not in a straight line so as to give less of a target to enemy guns that will shoot at us, and don't get too excited when the gunner or he started shooting. How reassuring was that? Especially remembering the 2 new bullet holes in the helicopter on the way here, and blood on the floor. Both the gunner and he started to shoot now and then. I was very concerned as all of us new guys thought that we may not even make it alive to Kuchi. I was too scared to be airsick. I swore right then and there that if one had to volunteer to become a flying crew chief, I was in no way going to volunteer. No way. These aircrew Huey guys were not only heroes of the First Order, but I figured that they would not live long doing this. How could they? This was no movie. It was real. I didn't find out later that being a combat Huey helicopter crew member was probably the most dangerous day-to-day thing a person could do here. I could see where the crew chief was aiming and there seemed to be gun smoke coming out of the foliage that the M60 tracers were flying into. The pilots were flying so low that they were hopping over and flying between trees. No amusement ride could compete with the movement and the terror of this helicopter ride.
The crew chief hit me on the shoulder and pointed and said that we were approaching Kuchi. It looked like a big area and we rushed in and landed in a big swirl of dust and whoosh of wind from the rotor blades as the nose of the helicopter pointed upwards and landed in an open area along some tin roofs with no sides on them. I dragged my duffel bag out of the helicopter as I jumped down. My legs nearly collapsed and were sort of wobbly. I do believe this helicopter ride affected my nervous system. It was purely frightening. The wild ride lasted about 30 minutes, I think, but I truly believed it could have been my last 30 minutes. I think all of us new guys were thinking about life and death on that ride. The helicopter then took off in a big dust and air blast again. My legs were still like rubber when we were walking to where a sergeant was waving to us to get under the tin roof area. Here we were new guys with our yet-to-be-fated dark jungle fatigues and very white skin on knowing not what was in store for us in this surreal reality. The sergeant wasted no time in reading our orders for Kuchi. He said that under the conditions that all 6 of us new guys would be assigned to an infantry company. We 3 that had helicopter mechanics training complained that we were helicopter mechanics and not infantry trained. The sergeant argued we were all trained as infantry in basic training. True, we said, but our whole 5 months of training would be wasted if we were put into the infantry. The sergeant said that most all helicopters were shot down and not flying on this base camp, so there was not need for helicopter mechanics at the moment. We vigorously protested that as more helicopters arrived in Vietnam, that we were to be the mechanics to make sure that they could fly. I spotted a lieutenant sitting on a folded chair with some ammo crates as a desk and walked up to him and said, "Sir, I would like to talk to you about what the sergeant is telling us." I found out that in the Army one has to speak up for one's rights even if you have no rights in the Army. There are 3 of us that are helicopter mechanics, and I went over the logic of not assigning us to an infantry company as 5 months of our Army training as mechanics would be wasted. He agreed and assigned the 3 of us to the 116th Assault Helicopter Company that was here in Kuchi, and signed our orders and pointed to where the 116th was located. He said once we were signed in at the 116th to come back here as you 3 need to be trained on the M16 rifle. Okay, we said with great relief as none of us looked forward to sleeping in the mud as infantry and walking with about 100 pounds on our backs at humid temperatures of about 100 degrees Fahrenheit and getting shot at. Those poor 3 other guys, we thought.
We discussed that the lieutenant might have saved our lives. We got to the 116th and signed in at the headquarters, which was a small hut with radios. There was a lot of talking going on over the radios. We were told to go over to the mechanics' hooches and find a cot to sleep on and stash our things. The hooches were about 16 by 16 feet with tin roofs, screen upper walls and wooden lower walls, all 1 story. The lower walls had sandbags piled up to about 5 feet off the ground on the outside to protect sleepers from shrapnel. The bunks were bunk beds top and bottom. The top bunks had no sandbags protecting them. We 3 new guys got top bunks, 8 guys to a hooch, and each 2 hooches had a dugout underground flooded bunker with rats to dive into when the rockets hit close. The rockets hit close at night, almost every night for many months. The rats were kings of the bunker at night, swimming around in the water. It was their dark underground home. They were not afraid to take a bite out of anyone either. It was disgusting enough in the rat-infested, flooded dark bunker, so that many of us preferred to take our chances of being blown to shreds, but in a prejudiced way. When the explosions got really close, everyone dove into the bunkers, rats or no rats. The older veteran guys, including 18-year-olds, welcomed us in a friendly manner. They told us they just had a lot of helicopters shot down and had some high casualties lately due to Tet and its continued aftermath. We new guys had to go to the 25th Infantry area to practice shooting M16 rifles, which we never fired or even saw before. I scored expert with the M16 5.56 mm. It was much easier to keep on target with multiple shots than the Heaver 7.62 mm M14. Later on, we found out that the new M16 jammed easily and a lot of guys were killed because of it. The infantry started to use Chinese AK-47S and its ammo as they were a dependable weapon. But the AK's 7.62 mm sounded different than the M16S in battle, and their tracer ammo was green as compared to our red. A very confusing situation in any battle. The AKs were not allowed in battle. The infantry were stuck using the M16S, or the more reliable M14S. I thought the M16 was sort of badly made as far as holding up in battle. It seemed like it could break as it was plastic in a lot of places. The ammo was lighter, and an infantryman could carry more rounds, but the new M16S killed a lot of American soldiers as it became a single-shot weapon once fired a lot, or it got a little dirty. The dirty gunpowder of the M16 round itself caused the M16 to jam. Why this rifle was even issued to combat troops was a big question. Probably a corporate entity was making money by issuing inferior ammo and an inferior weapon. Good, brave young American soldiers dying because of the M16's inferior design and ammunition probably reached the thousands. Unforgivable.